Well, welcome in, and thanks for tuning in to the Money Wisdom Podcast, powered by Johnson Brunetti. As always, I'm Jake Dozer, certified financial planner, joined by my partner in crime up in our Boston offices, Nick Colantuono, certified financial planner as well. We have a question in front of us today from one of our viewers, and the question is, I'm in my 50s and work as a computer engineer. We see a lot of engineers in Connecticut and Massachusetts. I like my boss and my coworkers, but my company has undergone a series of layoffs the past couple of years. Another thing that we're pretty familiar with over the past couple of years is layoffs. And this is what the viewer concludes his question with. So far, I've been safe from layoff, but how should I best prepare in case my day comes? That's a great question. And I think that it's a question that is on a few people's minds, especially as they see their colleagues potentially get layoffs, or maybe see the writing on the wall as a company goes through financial straits or what have you. Nick, what would you start with by saying are the checklist items that this viewer needs to be paying attention to?
Yeah, it's a fantastic question, and the reality of this viewer's situation is they find themselves in a pretty fragile position. They mentioned that they're in their 50s, right? Maybe it's early 50s, maybe it's late 50s. Either way, 50s is a point in time in which you would be penalized for accessing retirement money. And the reality of it is that's where the majority of us have done our savings, have done our investing. So if you don't have flexibility, if you don't have control of having different money across different taxable worlds where you can get your hands on money that you need when you need it, then I would argue you don't have much of a plan because, again, Mike Tyson, I don't know if we could say his name on the podcast. We don't have the rights. But the old saying is everybody has a plan until they get punched in the mouth, right? And all of a sudden you get laid off in your early 50s. I'd say that's getting punched in the mouth. And that's where you really want to have a plan in place of flexibility. Again, if all your money's in retirement accounts, well, you can't necessarily access it without one, taxes, but two, early withdrawal penalties. So just making sure that you're balanced, well-positioned is critical.
You're exactly right. I'd love to elaborate further on that. I do feel like the 50s is where the wheat gets separated from the chaff. And what I mean by that is there's effectively two phases of life as it pertains to your relationship with your money. It's the accumulation phase and the decumulation phase, or put in layman's terms, the growth phase and the withdrawal phase of life. And in your 50s is when it becomes much more poignant that, oh man, my relationship with my money is about to change. When you're in your 20s, your 30s, maybe even your 40s, the goal of your wealth is set it and forget it. It's, I want to put it in there. I want to let it be as aggressive as possible. And I want to just grow for an indefinite future. Well, when you're in your 50s, all of a sudden retirement's knocking. And it's like, whoa, I could be done with this in 10 years. And all of a sudden, the reality and gravitas of the amount of money I have needs to be sufficient for 20, 30, 40 years of the back half of my life where I need that money to be there. And at the basis of that is the necessity of a plan. That's when buying and holding and pretending like the statement doesn't exist when the stock market's going crazy is no longer sufficient. And you recognize the need of, in a few years, I need to tap into this money and I need to make sure I don't hurt myself on the way out. And so to Nick's point, diversification, or what I like to call tax diversification, becomes so critical. A lot of times the old adage is put money into a retirement account, pay the taxes when I withdraw one day. Well, when you're 50, you're probably making a lot more money than you've ever made in your whole career, aren't you? And what that translates to is perhaps it is worth revisiting what strategy of taxes in versus taxes out. Perhaps it's worth adding some diversification, as Nick mentioned, not having all your money in a retirement account and start saving on the side in what we would call a brokerage account or an individual or joint account where, like a bank account, it's accessible, but it's not locked up until you're 59 and a half, like a retirement account. And you can withdraw from it now if you had to. Now, of course, there comes with drawbacks with that. You don't get to defer your taxes till later, like a traditional retirement account, or you don't get to grow tax-free like a Roth account. But it does allow you to keep yourself balanced from an accessibility perspective. And that is critical, especially, let's face it, when you're in your 50s and 60s, it's illegal, but let's face it, when you're at that age, the age of you applying for a new job is relevant, and people think about that. And while that's unfair and frankly illegal, it doesn't mean that it doesn't happen. We all know that. Nick, what other things? So we need to be aware of accessibility. We need to be aware of the fact that a plan is coming down the pipeline. What else are we doing here? Are we involving the kids? Are we involving significant others? How does this planning evolve beyond those basics?
Yeah, I think it has to.
Mhm.
We look at everything from a 10,000-foot view. I say, we're not just looking at the investments. We're not just talking rate of return or this fund or that fund. I mean, we're looking at everything on a really what I call a cross-disciplinary basis. So we're
Yes.
checking all the boxes when making sure that our clients are going to be okay. And you mentioned this individual, as you said, you'd like to think that we can all just go out and get a new job, but that might not be the case. So if this person
Mhm.
is, quote, forced to retire, right? The book we wrote, Forced to Retire, the chances are they could find themselves in a position where they are retired for a longer period of time than they were actually working, right? You figure they started working at 25, retired at 50.
Right.
Well, now you're 50, you're going to live to your late 80s, maybe 90s, who knows? So, of course, there's a lot of planning that has to go in for this whole, second, frankly, half of someone's life here. So,
Right.
yes, you want flexibility, and while you're working, while you're earning, while you have the ability to save, you want to make sure that those dollars that you are able to save are going for into the best possible position for you. I know we're all
Right.
just creatures of habit. We're doing what we were told to do, and funding retirement, funding retirement, funding retirement. But you want to go buy a house, you're not taking that money from retirement, right? So again, you have to think of the realities of the situation further down the road, more so than just the short term implications of taking that money today. Save it for a rainy day, defer the taxes. Sure, sounds great, but when it comes to practice, you need to get your hands on money in a pinch. Not so flexible, not so ideal. So again, different buckets doing different things, different money, living in different taxable worlds. It's all about flexibility and control, as you know.
Are you ready to retire with confidence? Join us for our retirement planning workshop and learn strategies to maximize Social Security, healthcare, income planning, taxation, and more. Text WORKSHOP to 800-757-0436 to reserve your spot, or click the link in this week's show for more details on how to register.
And that's a great place for us to close out today. And while you're watching, if you're thinking about, I wonder if my plan has addressed these concerns, recognize that a plan means going from saving for a one day to where is my one day? How much do I need for that one day? What's that going to look like? How is my investment portfolio comprised? And what are the practical actual specifics for my scenario compared to how I've been saving for historically, which is one day it'll come. That's the difference, and that's where you have a plan, and that's where you can reach out. And if we can help, we'd love to do so. Or tune in next time to the Money Wisdom Podcast, powered by Johnson Brunetti.
Investment advisory services offered through JB Capital LLC. Insurance products offered through JN Financial LLC.